Okay, so before we start, we're just going to take a moment and pray over this time to use. So you just bow your head and pray with me. Dear God, thank you for this day, and thank you for getting us all here safely. I pray that you use this time to speak to us and to speak how to hear you and show you in our work environment. Use these people on stage to help lead us in everything that we'll be doing in our future. In your holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. And I'm going to assume by the red light that we're on as well, right? Fantastic. Hey, thank you guys for coming. I know you are compelled, like the love of Christ compels you. The extra credit in your class compels you to be here, right? That's an important thing. This is our first in our brand new series, Faith at Work. If you were here with us in the fall, maybe you got a chance to see the business breakdown, heard Andy Newton from Unity Fiber speak. We had a great time with that. And as we were kind of exploring to see where do we need to go, one of the pieces that really stood out was, it's important for us as students, as professionals, to really think about what does it look like to integrate our faith into work. It's a very easy thing for us to live in this separation as Christians, to think about a separation between the sacred and the secular. We often talk about our work self, or our home self, our family self, our church self, our fun self even. And what ends up happening is we end up kind of bifurcating the world. And so we look at the pastor and the missionary as a wholly different thing and a higher thing than we look at the painter or the mechanic. And yet God is calling each one of us to live using our gifts that he's given to us for his glory, no matter what our work is. A writer by the name of Andy Crouch, he said this as a way of kind of opening. In his book, Culture Making, Recovering Our Creative Calling, he said, I wonder what Christians are known for in the world outside our churches. Are we known as critics, consumers, copiers, condemners of culture? I'm afraid so. Why aren't we known as cultivators, people who tend and nourish what is best in human culture, who do the hard and painstaking work to preserve the best of what people have done before us? Why aren't we known as creators, people who dare to think and do something that's never been thought or done before, something that makes the world more welcoming and thrilling and beautiful? I think it's an important message for us as we look at what we're doing. And there's a reason that these two are sitting here today. When I was thinking about this series, they came to the top of my mind, and I was so thrilled that we were able to connect. I want to tell you a little bit about them, okay? So about 3 years ago, I met Vanessa for the first time. She was introduced to me by a mutual friend. She was leading a group called VMR Agency here in town. And I was so impressed with her and the team that I brought them in my business, and they were the first members of our community to present in our coffee chat series. And she talked about this sense of purpose, and I was struck by the call of purpose in the life of somebody that leads a marketing and public relations firm. I thought that was really unique. And so I was able to watch her over the course of time, and through their purpose project, they every year would donate a full campaign to a nonprofit that was deserving in our community. I thought, wow, that's a really unique way to take your professional gifts and implement them for the good of others in our community. So I've watched her over the course of time as she strengthens brands, she's told stories, she's empowered voices of those that are overlooked in our community. And I just felt this deep connection to who she is and what she's doing. And then all of a sudden, I found out about this new piece that she was working on, and it so fits. Vanessa, along with Rachel and Bradley Good, is leading a new magazine called Full and Well Magazine. And it's impressive because this is their mission: to inspire believers by showing how each area of life is remade when we're truly convinced of Jesus' words, I've come that they may have life and have it to the full, John 10:10. So there's a reason she's here. Mrs. Vanessa Reyner. And then there's a really interesting thing when people think about car sales. okay? It usually isn't terms like integrity and truth and community and family that come to their mind, right? I mean, you think about, we were kind of focusing on this yesterday. You think about the used car salesperson. There's a great one that Danny DeVito plays in Matilda, okay? But when you're in Mobile and you talk to people about the Bullard Automotive Group, you hear something totally different. You hear that this is a group of people who care and are passionate. And Ty is the leader of that group. He leads a company that encompasses Joe Bullard Cadillac, Infiniti, Jaguar, Acura, Land Rover, and now Lincoln Ford. And they're doing some amazing things. And I've seen Ty quietly but very powerfully influencing the way people think about sales in our community, the way people think about a corporate entity giving back into their community. I've watched them as they've empowered people through generous gifts, through coming alongside people as they're starting and moving their organizations, and people making impact. And that's why he's here, Mr. Ty Bullard. So I always am very mindful that when you ask people to come, it's very important not to put them on the spot. So I always give people questions in advance because then we're having thoughtful dialogue. So you'll know that I'm looking at my questions. They've had the questions. They've studied them just like you study for a test. They have everything down pat. All their citations are APA proper. And they're ready to rock and roll. So, we'll have some time hopefully at the end that if you have some questions that you might be able to meet with them individually and talk briefly. But I want to start out, and we'll just kind of hit it with the three of us here. What are some tangible ways that you live out your walk inside a professional world? And I know, Vanessa, you even put it out to your Instagram crew to be able to get some feedback. What kinds of things for you, and then what did you hear from others?
Well, I think starting with others, because I think everybody can relate to these examples, but it can be really scary when you think about sharing your faith at work. I mean, there's not a lot of real opportunity to just start preaching at people, right? That would be really awkward, and people would probably be like, what are you doing? And so I love the ways that people said, well, I just would take time to not think about, even if it's 30 minutes, my success that day, and I would go spend some time and help my colleagues get through a project or understand something better. I had a CPA say that instead of worrying about their billable time that day, they would go help, their partner succeed in something they were struggling with. And with me, I think, in the business world, there's a common me first attitude, and also we rely so much on how we can accomplish things and our self-sufficiency. And I think when you can kind of see opportunities or identify opportunities to replace that, the competition with attitudes of humility and love and patience in work, that alone, I think, is an extremely tangible way to show that Jesus is working in you. And so, and that, a lot of times that can be, work can be really frustrating. There are real deadlines. You're dealing with people's real money, people's real lives. And that kind of stuff can bring out a lot of tension sometimes. And I think that's expected in the business world. But when you can come from a place of patience and love, no matter what, it's a real tangible way, whether you're saying it's because of Jesus or God or whatever. You don't necessarily have to use those words to show your faith at your job.
And I think it's a really interesting piece, Ty. Obviously, when people look at your company, they recognize you're different. How does that look underneath the surface? I mean, if we were to literally open up the hood, maybe metaphorically, not literally.
Yeah. I think, she was talking, I was kind of processing this. For me, it was all about, it starts with the people that I work with really knowing who I am. And that was just a big piece for me. And when I say that is we all have our own stories. We all have our own walks with the Lord and our own testimonies. And, you know, and Jesus talks a lot about those. But I felt like it was so important for me to express that, for them to know my story. Because I don't know how you can really connect with somebody until you really know them at a level that is below the surface. And so that wasn't easy. That took vulnerability because at the end of the day, if you're the leader, the guy in charge, you don't want to show weakness. And my story's full of it. It's full of weakness. It's full of mess. But I just thought that was to start out. I just felt like the Lord was like, all right, you want to really do this thing, walk this way. It's not going to be fun necessarily, but you need to really open up. And in certain times, and I've kind of created an environment where I can do that. But it was like she said, it's bold. There's some risk in that, and it's nerve-wracking a little bit. But I thought that was an important first step for me, was to really help the people I work with understand who really Ty is, because Ty's not a car dealer. You know, Ty's a Christian that happens to just do this for a living. And so I thought that was an important first step. I don't know if that answered your question, but I think that's important. For me, it was really important to really open up and get to know him. And then that just opens the channels for conversation and because that's where it happens, is in those little times, those small moments that they really see you kind of walking the walk and not necessarily beating them over the head with the Bible, but you have opportunity to speak into their lives, and you are in a position of influence. And that's what you have to, that I've got to remember is, like it or not, I'm in a position of influence. And I've been given that position of influence, and I've always got to remember that. And it's important to realize that and make sure that you are, for me, it's important for me to remember that, to make sure that I'm using that influence the way he wants me to use it.
And I think that's a real piece, because one of the challenges that we face is that life looks different. So you think about come together on Sunday morning, you feel great about your walk, right? You feel great about it. Even at university, you think about you're surrounded by people who are encouraging you, and they're helping you grow and move forward. And then life happens, and the challenges surround us. So this is about being real. So Ty, let's piggyback off what you were just saying. They need to know you. They need to see it. What challenges have you faced then when you think about bringing your faith into work? What is the kind of the common barriers that you're dealing with?
You know, I think it's more myself than anything. I think it's I think it's probably the enemy getting in my head saying, don't do this, and trying to convince me it's a bad idea is really probably what it is. But I mean, the biggest challenge is to just step out and be uncomfortable. I mean, golly, you know, you heard that word, comfort and growth aren't in the same sentence. They don't belong in the same sentence. And that's so true. But it's so hard to get out of our comfort zones. And for me it is. And I think there's been challenges of sitting across having an employee that's not a Christian. You know. That's okay. At the end of the day, hey, he's good at what he does, or she's good at what he does, but we're there to nourish him and cherish him. But it's hard to kind of, you just got to be you and continue to press on, because it's very easy to get discouraged because of numbers. Because, oh, hey, we've got jobs to do, and maybe the performance isn't at the level that the job entails it to be, and then you got to have that tough conversation. But for me, it all starts back to that starting your day with him, and starting your day that I don't do as much as I need to, but when those days I start out with him, and he's with me, those days are the ones that I've got the stamina and the courage to step through those tough conversations. And so that's to me what it all boils down to. Leadership's lonely. It's lonely. And there's a lot of lonely days. And it doesn't have to necessarily be alone, but there are just lonely times in it. And so, in those lonely times, you're not really lonely because he's got you. But we just think we're lonely. We forget that. I did forget. Let me use I forget that. But, that's really the biggest challenge. Y'all don't have enough time for me to tell you your story. I'll tell my story, but I don't have enough time. I don't take that's not what this is for. But I've got plenty of issues that I could spend all day telling you that I've faced in my life. But I'll let Vanessa tag along and give her thoughts.
How do you do that in the sense of building intentionality? I mean, that's...
Sorry.
It's all right.
We got this.
It's built for toddlers. It's fun.
That's the joy of it right there. How do you build intentionality into this process? Because I mean, that I think is one of the first steps that we tend to struggle with. Because if we're not intentional, it's the afterthought. It's easy to sit behind. How do you go about that process in your work?
Gosh, it's so important to be intentional. Because like you said, life happens so fast, and when we're at worship on Sundays and we're surrounded by our brothers and sisters like in Christ, those conversations come really easily, and you know you're all on the same page and you have the same desires. And then when you go into the workforce the next day, you're dealing with all sorts of people who, like Todd mentioned, might not be Christian, or maybe they are and they're just really not on that walk with you right then. They're not where you are. You might be on fire about something and you're talking to them about it and they're just like, blank face, and you're not on fire. I'm on fire. This is amazing. So I find that being intentional about what your goals are, how you're trying to walk through this professional life with Jesus, comes easier with daily prayer and scripture. Because if we don't arm ourselves with Jesus's practices and truly understand what he did and why he did things with money and businesses and marriage and everything that he talked about, we have to study that stuff just like we study anything else for our reactions to be natural as a follower of Christ. Because then you just become so reactionary, and who knows what your intentions really are when you react the way you do. But taking in the way of Jesus daily through prayer and studying scripture, it allows you to naturally respond as Jesus did, or how he would want you to respond. And that is the intention behind all of it. And so, because you're going to come across all sorts of obstacles. And I loved how that you mentioned it's lonely being a leader, because it very much is. And there's a true cost to discipleship, and some of that can be like you feel like you're standing alone sometimes, or sometimes your business decision certainly did not make sense on paper, but it made sense to Jesus. And so there's this true cost there. And I think if you know it's coming and you're ready for it, it's just easier to make those decisions.
Yeah, I think that's a really tough challenge, is we're going to face these kinds of things. And I think a lot of times the picture that we're painted is like, I have to wear my cross, and I have to go out and I have to tell Jesus is with you, Jesus loves you, Jesus loves you.
Yeah.
And we get almost that kind of a feel like that's what it means to be a Christian in the world of work and in all of our life, that we have to go out and like, God bless you when somebody sneezes. I mean, we have to be almost that over-the-top caricature of what it looks like to follow Jesus. But I've seen it in both of the companies that you guys have led. Bearing fruit doesn't just look like wearing my Jesus shirt, okay? It looks like more than that. How do you guys bear fruit in the things that you're doing? And it doesn't just have to be what you would think of as overtly Christian, but how are you guys doing that in the things that you do? Vanessa, I'll start with you.
That is such a good question. I wish I knew in all the ways that we bear fruit, but I think sometimes you just have no idea how far your reach goes or how you're impacting people. But I love that you mentioned that you have to go out and preach and tell, I pray and read scripture every day, and I'm involved in my church and all that good stuff. But if somebody on the street probably walked up to me and like, Jesus loved you, I'd be like, oh, okay. I still just think that can be a weird approach. So bearing fruit, I think, honestly, when you're dealing with people that you don't know where their walk is, maybe they're not Christian, and you just speak the language of love, you love them, just like Todd mentioned, you're getting below that surface level. I mean, everybody's here to connect. We are made for connection. We are made for vulnerability, and that's who we're created to be. And so when you can connect to people through loving them, then that will bear fruit beyond, what you can see. And I think at the end of the day, that's just the most important thing. If you can affect somebody, make them feel loved, I think that is very, very fruitful at the end of the day. And sometimes that can be really hard when you're the leader.
A couple things that come to mind for us that are little things that I think that I know get noticed, but for me, I felt like I was just told to do them. But one thing we do in our showrooms is we play Christian music. It's always on the background. It drives people crazy that work there half the time. And the reason I tell you that is because they play the same songs over and over and over. And what a lot of those people don't realize is that I get comments all the time from people saying, I just want to let you know how that made me feel when I walked in your dealership and it had Christian music. I just felt like that was something. I felt like the Lord told me to do that about 3 years ago. That and one other thing, two other things, but that's something that does it. And so they come up to me and like, Todd, can we please change it? Can we just put the jazz for a little bit? And I'm like, I know. I said, but let me
Can
tell
we
you.
have elevator music?
I'm like, I appreciate your thought, but no is the answer. But let me tell you why. And I tell them why. I was like, because you never know who's going to walk through that door and that might serve in a way. I said, yeah, we're here all day, but you never know who's going to walk through that door and that might affect to a positive way. And that's our role here, is to influence in a positive way, to influence toward the kingdom. And so that's kind of my response to them. And so they like, yes, sir, we're going to play, we just continue. We'd seen some K-Love to, all the other ones that just try to change it, but they're all repeated. Second thing, this was kind of funny. In the second, on the hold music, when you get put on hold, I had the Christian music on the hold music because I just couldn't stand the elevator music, first off, because you had to find a better alternative. I mean, first off, I don't want you to be a hold long, but if you're on hold, I'd rather you at least be something entertained. But it's amazing how that had an effect. My dad called me one day. He said, hey, they put me on hold, and I heard that Christian music. And my dad's a believer, but he's also, was like, are you sure that's what we're saying? I said, Dad, I felt like the Lord told me, all right, good, I'm not going to say anything. That's good. Keep it on. So we just kind of dropped it at that. But one thing we did, we've got a lady that works with us that I felt like was really kind of not given to us, but kind of came to work for us. It's been working for us a while, Crystal. And she is... we kind of created a role for her that is really she's the agape leader of our company. And it's called Serving Love. And that agape means serving love. And so all she does every day is serve people and serve our employees in all kind of ways. And so it's really been interesting. We've been committed to it for about 3 years now. I think we're on our third year. We've gotten, and so I think those things have certainly been examples of tangible stuff that takes commitment, though. It takes commitment because it's expensive. I mean, that person, that's all she does, and I pay her, and that's, but that's committing to trying to create an environment that, and a culture that is for the kingdom. And so anyways, those are all things from the Lord. They just haven't passed through me. So there's no credit on my part, but it's just it's been a fun thing to be a part of.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's interesting because, we step back and we think about bottom line. Okay. And we're always talking about bottom line in the business because there's never enough money. There's never enough money, but that's an investment that you guys have made. You guys made the investment of giving up your time and service to be able to help others. And I think that's a unique perspective because you've intentionally committed to those types of pieces. Now, let's flip the script a little bit because as I said, it's not always easy. There are challenges. Have you ever faced a time that you had to walk away from something because you kind of recognized that the little piece inside you is just the Spirit speaking to you that maybe not. Have you ever had that? You don't need to tell the experience, but have you ever had it? And talk a little bit about kind of how do you process that? You get to go first.
Vanessa.
That is so hard. And, I have been out of college quite a while now. And I would say when I was just out of college, that wouldn't have been even on my radar to kind of make those type of decisions. That came out with age and growth and spiritual growth and all that. So I wouldn't expect everybody to kind of see that stuff. But yes, there are lots of challenges. I wish I would have known that more when I was in my 20s. But I think that, yes, I have said no to some things because I think for me, if I can't see, not that I need tangible proof of everything, but if I can't see a pathway to helping others, and I can in a lot of things, but if I can't see it at all, I'll say no to a project. And I think just recently, I was brought in to pitch some work for a project. I'm stumbling through this because this like just happened, and I'm trying to wrap my head around it for you guys. But I didn't know if I was supposed to take it or not, and so I just prayed that like Jesus just make the decision for me. Like, I know you will be in the yes or the no, and I'm okay either way, but please God, just be in the yes or the no. Like, I don't want to make this decision. I don't want this responsibility. Take it from me.
You went on a billboard, said yes.
Yeah.
Vanessa, say yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I get it. I prayed 1,000 times.
Vanessa.
Yeah. And so just having that trust that he'll kind of come in and take it from you. But I think anything that we do, we can learn from and see it as an opportunity to like let God work through us, no matter what it is. But yeah,
it's hard to say no to money.
it is so hard to say no to money, especially when you're like young and just starting out, or ever, I guess. But
there you go. Yeah.
but there's
Bills.
there's like a survival mode where you're just like, you have to pay bills, you've got responsibilities, and then I think hopefully you can get to a purposeful mode to where you maybe realize that the way everything you think works can be worked a different way to follow God, just depending on what you feel like your needs are. So
Yeah. What does that look like?
I've never said no to a car deal. Todd, when I think of challenges, my brain goes to where have I screwed up, and I think mine have come in conversations. Maybe where they got too emotional, maybe where I got too passionate about one thing being numbers, because we're in a performance-based business.
Yep.
The car business is a performance-based. Everything's measured. How many did you do today? How many ups did you have? How many of those ups did they test drive? Those did test drive, how many get a credit app? Everything is measured. And so, sometimes you can get wrapped up in the pressures of the finances of the business. And so I think due to that, being in my young, still young, but in my immaturity, I've let that get into the emotional part of a conversation. Mm-hmm. That attacked something that I wasn't supposed to attack, and that wasn't fair on me, and that wasn't right by me. And so that's what kind of comes to mind is conversations with important people. The people you work with that maybe I crossed the line and was coming from a different perspective than I didn't need to be coming from the wrong heart. At the end of the day, it was coming from the wrong heart, and those are the things I think back that I regret, and that I try to learn from, each day. It's that kind of what comes to mind. I don't know if that makes sense or something.
And I think we see these kinds of things. You step out. The reality is there was one perfect that walked. And the rest of us they're us. Okay, so we're going to face those challenges. And I think a lot of times it comes into an understanding of, do we recognize when that piece has happened? Do we learn from it? Do we grow? And how does that change us moving forward? Because we're all going to face those kinds of pieces in life. You're going to face challenges immediately. People, as soon as they graduate, face a challenge of how do they turn their resume into something that it's really not in order to get a job. Right? Sometimes it's not like, we can do nice things with resumes. Sometimes there's out and out lies, and you've seen it. Just in our culture, there are a lot of times that's come back. People have said things, or the story kind of grew over the course of time to the point that it became something that it totally wasn't, and it's come back and they've lost jobs. They've been humiliated because of that. Mm-hmm. I think the challenge is, what's your grounding? And I think that's one of the things that you guys are hitting at here. what I think is really unique is I watched your work, and Ty, I'm going to touch a little bit on Soul's story here. Vanessa, obviously, you've got it in your work. The branding, you guys have cultivated something that's a little bit different in the branding and the messaging that you guys use. Ty, talk a little bit about that, because if you go to joebullard.com, all right, you're going to see these videos that are sitting there in the back of the website, and I encourage you, not right now, because there's no Wi-Fi in here, all right? We are in an 1800s chapel, okay?
Mobile night's not real great either. So.
Okay,
Anyway.
but when you're sitting down in front of your laptop, go to it and see, because you'll start to see, even in the video, certain things that pick up. How did you guys decide to kind of shift that message?
It's actually a pretty definitive story, but I was riding my car. I had actually gone to a seminar about, this is probably 6 years ago, and I was real young then. And they had this crazy guy up there, he was just a real animated guy, advertising guy, and he was just basically talking about quality commercials. And most of the stuff you watch now is, I apologize that you have to watch it, but it's
when you
just
think of
typical
automotive commercials, you always
they
think
are
of
not
quality,
winning ad awards, I promise you. And so it just bothered me. And so I've always been a guy that goes against the grain a little bit. I don't like to do everything everybody else does. And so I knew I wanted to do something different. And I knew I wanted to do something that built equity on top of each other. And I wanted to, not something that was a 90-day sales cycle, whether it's clearance now, well, then it's spring sale, then it's summer. So my brain was starting. I was in my car one day. I was on Cottage Hill Road, heading to my dealership. And I was sitting there kind of thinking about it and praying about it, and something came to my mind. I kept starting to say, what is the brand? And I said, I am the brand. What is the brand? I am the brand. And I started thinking, when I was a little boy, I used to go to the dealership with my dad, Christmas Eve or Christmas right before we close. And I'd sit there and he'd gather all the employees up, and my dad would always have some, kind of speech to tell them, some words of encouragement and thankfulness. And so I always went there. And one thing he always said was, he said, guys, Joe Bullard's my name, but there's a lot more to Joe Bullard than just me. Y'all all make up this name. It just happens to be my name. But he said, Joe Bullard, y'all all make that name up. And so I started thinking about that in the car, and I said, just kind of said, I am Joe Bullard. Who is Joe Bullard? Who is Joe Bullard? I am Joe Bullard. What is Joe Bullard? And so I started thinking this, and so that's kind of where I felt like the Lord put it on my heart, and it really was just to share our people. We've somehow figured out how to be in business a while, and with that comes people that have been loyal to us, and I just thought it was a great opportunity. There's just a lot of cool stories. There's a lot of cool stories in these companies. There's a lot of cool stories in these companies all over town, and we just have a few of them, and so I've been able to share them. And so we just share, like I said, our commercials are more a story about our people, and because I thought that was a lot more interesting than to hear about how it's $2.99 a month for 36 months with $1,000 to do a sign. So
print underneath.
The small print. And so we started doing it. And so we just started with one, and we did 60-second commercials, which most people do 30. They thought I was crazy, and I said, all right, you think that's crazy? I'm gonna do 90-second commercials. And so now I do 90. And so it's really been something that's brought attention to our people that I couldn't even realize. I mean, that's the thing I didn't realize going into this. If you could tell me I could pay this a month just for employee morale, I'd do it. Just because people, you put somebody Lee Dale Scarborough, he's worked for us 43 years, 44 years, 10 years longer than I've been alive. First off, he couldn't, it took me a year to convince him to do it because he wouldn't be on TV. He doesn't, he didn't want to do this deal. I'll tell you one quick story, but with Lee Dale. And so he went down there and he finally did it. And it was fantastic. I mean, it was just Mr. Lee Dale. It was Mr. Lee Dale, who's a phenomenal human being that anybody needs to meet. I mean, everybody needs to meet. He's just incredible. And so so we play that commercial, and it just gets crazy. And people just, just all kind of feedback. We had a lady call me one day. She goes, Ty, you don't know me. I live in Pensacola. And she said, I want to tell you a story real quick. And she's telling me the story. And she said, I was driving on I-10 25 years ago. I was driving on I-10, got a flat tire, I was on the side of the road right over the bay, Spanish Fort. It was dark, I was by myself, I didn't know what to do, and then all of a sudden this car pulls up, knocks on my fender and says, "Ma'am, can I help you?" And she said, "Absolutely, okay, I didn't want to scare you." And so guy changes the tire, whatever, says, "What can I pay?" He says, "You don't owe me anything. That's my job. You don't owe me anything." Gets in the car, drives off. She calls me that day and she said, "Ty, for 25 years, I didn't know who this man was. And he just came on my TV screen. And I had to call you and tell you that I'm going to come over there and thank Mr. Liddell Scarborough for what he did that night." And I was like, unbelievable. I was like, hold on. It was just crazy. But it's been incredible to hear stories, because it just people just want real. They just want to know the real stuff. And so that's been a cool thing for us. So anyways, that's where it started, though. It was really, it felt like the kind of Lord put it on our company, and we've just tried to run with it and keep it going, and it's been really cool. So,
and what's interesting about it too is there is a differentiation that you guys have developed, and so you're true to who you are, but you've also created a brand differentiation that has really, I think, empowered people to recognize that you're more than just the cars on the lot. You're a company that they want to do business with. So I think that's a really unique piece. Vanessa, you've been part of, through the passion and purpose work that you've done. How did you kind of build that out, and then even take us a little bit into Full and Well and what that looks like? Because I think if you haven't seen Full and Well magazine, fullandwellmagazine.com, really unique piece, and I think where you guys are going to go is really, it fits so well alongside this series that it just has to happen. So talk a little bit about how you built it out through VMR, and then now what you're doing through Full and Well.
Yeah, so with VMR Agency, which I started in 2011, it's an advertising agency, and I think once I started realizing that there wasn't this sacred secular divide that we're talking about today, and that we were all put here to be team members, all on the same team, no matter what our skill set is. You don't have to be a preacher or a missionary going to all these countries. The hard work is here every day, living for Jesus. I realized, well, I'm in marketing, and advertisement, same thing as like car dealership commercials. People were like, okay, you're in advertising. You're trying to sell people a bunch of stuff. Anyways, I could use my skill set at the time to further Jesus's kingdom. And the way we did that is we would work with businesses and partner with businesses who we believed were truly trying to help communities. So whether that's through their employees, just being amazing employers, building up communities through their resources and skill sets, just like we were trying to do. And that became the entire purpose of VMR. And we were able to do some really awesome stuff with it. So even for our paying clients, we picked those purposeful avenues with them, and we would also just give away crazy amounts of time to these organizations that never would have had that exposure without some true marketing or PR. And so I just simply think of marketing as a form of communication, and what is it that you're trying to communicate is what becomes important. I can either communicate something over here that really shines light on consumerism, or I can communicate something over here where there's some really good business going on that employs a lot of people and that helps a lot of communities. And so that's how I saw it. And I just truly believe there is no divide, that Jesus is in all of it. And that's what we try to show with Full and Well. And we, if you've never read the book Garden City, just go out and get it right now. John Mark Comer, he's a pastor in California. Anyways, he wrote Garden City, which is all about our purpose in work here and how we're all trying to build up our skill set for the kingdom. We're not just going to go fly off and sing hymns like forever and ever. Like, we're going to have a purpose, and we're all practicing right now for that purpose. Anyways, we did a big study at our church led by my partners Rachel and Brad Good, and when we were talking about finding your purpose in work, everybody was just like, you could just see, like, I just don't understand how to do that. I have responsibilities, I have a boss, and what's this? Like, how do I do that? And so that was kind of the idea of how Full and Well was born. We're doing nothing but telling the stories of people across the country who are living out their faith in the marketplace. Or maybe you're a stay-at-home mom, and how do you do that when you're in the nitty-gritty of the dishes and kids and mess and blah, blah? How can that reflect the kingdom of Jesus? And so we're trying to talk about everything else that's not in the church, because you can reach so many more people by not being in the church. So it's imperative that you see your secular life as a walk with Christ. And so when you go to fullandwellmagazine.com, you'll see like a story about Chance the Rapper. He's one of our big features, and how amazing work he's doing through his rap music. And another general surgeon who decided to shut down his insanely successful business practice as a general surgeon and open up a health clinic that helps people who otherwise couldn't afford health insurance. And it's just all about leaving church and bringing Jesus to the people. And so that's kind of what we're talking about. And it's been amazing. And the idea of it, just like Ty said, is to tell those stories of those people. Then hopefully people can really get behind this idea of how people are doing this everywhere, through their careers and through every walk of their life. You know, you don't have to go to church to do that, because church is just the people, and we are everywhere. So we need to make sure that everything we're doing reflects that walk with Jesus, so then it can bring other people in to know him better.
And I think that tends to be one of the things that's missing, is the idea that we can reflect Christ in what we do, wherever it is. I was reading recently about In-N-Out Burger, and I know we don't have them here in our area, but In-N-Out Burger is a very different fast food franchise, because one, the quality of the food is different. They hold themselves very accountable to have high quality food because they believe people deserve it. They treat their employees differently. They've always been far above the minimum wage offerings in each place. They give them opportunity for benefits. Their managers make $160,000 a year.
Wow.
I was ready to quit. I love the university.
Who's going to
I thought about going to be, I mean, I'm no good with burgers or anything like that.
Oh, you flip them with the best of.
I can learn, right? But I thought that's a unique commitment from what we would typically think of as kind of a throwaway job, right? In our community, those tend to be throwaway jobs, but the commitment that In-N-Out makes, and they said, you know, look, we love Jesus and we love people, and because of that, we treat people holistically in a way that Christ would do it. And I think that's something that's so unique, and you guys are doing that as you serve community. So, Ty, I know it's not one of those things, you don't serve community to be able to point to the fact that you're serving community, but how are some unique ways that you guys are serving community? You're serving nonprofits kind of in our area.
You know, I don't know. There's a bunch of unique ways. I mean, I think the most important thing is we realize that's a part of what we exist for.
Yeah.
I think is what you kind of first have to establish. Is so many people look at it as a burden, or look at it as, and I'm not saying so many, but I could see how it can sometimes be like, this is the 17th person that's come to ask for your money today. Like, please, can you get, I mean, there's plenty of opportunities out there, but I think what I've tried to remind myself is, God, that's our job, that's our role. This community is fantastic to us. The least we could do is give effort and put back into this community. And so there's plenty of things we do. One unique thing we did we're 2 years into it, is we have our own little charity board at the company. I'm not involved. I have one little request. I have one little request that I get to put in there. Or I have one little suggestion I get to put in there, which is totally not weighted. It's fair. But I thought, what a great way. So many times we used to do these things, and it'd be kind of forced from the top, and you felt like you had to be obligated to donate to something. And so one thing we decided to do is put a charity board together, all walks of the company, and there's probably 15 people that serve on that. They all represent. There's all some representation from the company. We've got a couple hundred employees, so there's probably 15 or so people on that board, and they take it. It's really grown. It's really come together, and so they go through a vetting process, and we get behind one nonprofit a year, and we really put some resources towards that. I mean, for instance, and this is not, it's their money, it's not mine, and so I can brag about it. But they, I think the last year we did kind of a campaign from the top, I'll say. I think we raised about $19,000 or something through the employee kind of raise, which is a lot of money. We did our first charity board. It raised $47,000. And $47,000 can fix some stuff. I mean, it can really impact a small, a nonprofit of any size, really. And so it was just awesome to see them engaged, and it just changed the dynamic. No managers can serve on it. They're not allowed to serve on it. It's just because I really wanted to kind of, keep it at its ground level as possible. So that's one kind of unique way we've started the last couple of years. It's worked. There's a lot of risk in that. I mean, it could probably come back to bite you in a way I don't really know at this point. But at the end of the day, we just felt led, so we're doing it. And so, that's part of risk. That's our business. And, maybe, hopefully it won't, but who knows? Probably not yet to learn that. But anyways, that's one thing that came to mind.
Would you talk a little bit, you alluded to it a little bit with some of the work that you were talking about. Would you talk a little bit about the Victory Health Partners campaign that you guys did? Because I think this is a really interesting one.
Okay. Trying to think where to start. Victory Health Partners, which is a health clinic in Mobile in town, and led by Dr. Lightfoot. He's who I was just mentioning, the general surgeon. You can read a story on FullandWellMagazine.com. But anyways, we gave them what VMR called a purpose project last year. And they were looking to kind of get the next generation of people involved in Victory Health. Victory Health, I think, probably has a lot of supporters from Dr. Lightfoot's contemporaries, so people his age, and they were looking at how do we get those younger people involved and understand what this is, and which you probably understand more about the healthcare nightmare than any other generation ever has. So it probably resonates with you. But so we just formulated, their board came up with this idea that they were going to get people involved on a very small basis, like $10 a month, because every $1 you donate to Victory Health turns into $30 worth of service. So
stop and think about that for a second.
Yeah.
$1 turns into 30.
It's a good
amazing.
return.
Amazing.
So essentially, when you talk about impact, when you donate $1, that you probably have bought in someone's medicine who probably wouldn't have bought it otherwise, and maybe saved them from a heart attack. That is how serious that is. When those type of patients they are just not going to the doctor because they can't afford it, and some of them are dying. That's how serious it is. So we built this entire branded social media campaign around this idea of be a change maker. Just give your change. If you can give your change, you can make so much change. And so we did things like, for the cost of your burrito tonight, you can bring people in for a real doctor's appointment. You're going to go for your round of beers after work, which is fine, but maybe give $15 instead. And then we kind of showed how far that money goes. And it was all digital. People could sign up right from their phone. And I think it's been really successful. They've actually taken it under their own arms now and continued with the campaign. But we were just trying to communicate on that level of what might be important to the younger generations. And so little things like food, fast food, and coffee, Starbucks, and we know how expensive that gets, and going out with your friends at night when you could do $20 a month and essentially save people's lives. They started out with just this very little goal of serving the underserved in Mobile, and they now serve 19,000 people from Mississippi to Florida because the need is so massive. Anyways, it's pretty amazing.
And I think one of the things to this, don't overlook the fact that even though you're working for somebody, you have an opportunity to give back to others. You have an opportunity to plug in and serve for the good of the kingdom. Okay, even as you're working with nonprofits. So never forget that. I want to hit this last question and then kind of get everybody out because some people might have noon classes. All right. We in the School of Business, we're starting to talk about this intersection between a what and a why. Mm-hmm. So everybody comes for a discipline. We're studying, whether it's accounting or management or finance or marketing or wherever you are. If you're not in the School of Business, thank you for being here. We're looking at that what, but then we're also looking at the why. How have you as an individual Ty, we'll start with you, and then pass to Vanessa. Yeah, I saw you over there, hopeful that you didn't have to go first. How have you found the what and the why, that intersection, so that you can be truly you?
This is total disclosure. I'm still looking for it.
Me too.
The what and the why. I mean, I feel I'm in a place in my life that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Now, how do you translate into a what and a why? Obviously, what is pretty simple. What we do, and but so many times I find myself getting the why confused sometimes, because sometimes I wake up and it's the why I feel like is profitability. Because I feel like so many people measure your success. That's the measurement of success in a company like ours. But most of the time, I understand that my why is kind of like Vanessa was talking about. Was we have a tremendous opportunity when I walk through those doors every day. I mean, and maybe this isn't the form talk, but I mean, like I said, the church is declining. I mean, it just is. I mean, I had several conversations with people in my office recently, or at the dealerships, that were saying, well, I don't go to church. I mean, that's where they start with. I don't go to church. So where are they getting it? And I just feel like my why is so clear of, well, I've been given this to be stewards of it, to be a minister to the kingdom at the end of the day. Now, I forget that a lot of times and throughout the day, but I feel like I understand what that is and why we do it. And I read something the other day that I thought was so simple that I felt like was good for me to kind of really exercise that why. I was reading a book, and it wasn't, this is like a sentence, like a pre-sentence before they really got in the meat of it, but it said, there was a part, and this is speaking for the person, the author, there was a part in my life when I first came to know the Lord, and I was excited about my faith. Man, that hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, when's the last time I walked out of this house and I was excited about my faith? Like maybe excited about a car deal, maybe excited about a new person, excited. But I thought about it, excited about my faith. And so it just made me think of, am I excited about my why? Am I excited about, and that's what my goal's got to be, is am I excited about doing that? Am I really feel like I'm in the lane that I'm supposed to be in? And I know I am. And that's a beautiful thing, is I know I am. I know I'm in. Now, I might not be listening exactly the way I need to be listening all the time, but I know I'm in the lane I'm supposed to be in. And so that's really, it's a tough question. It's a tough concept. I mean, it's a tough thing. And you've heard why. You've probably seen Simon Sinek's video of the why. It's all about the why and the apple. And, they use these big companies like Apple that are hard to compare to a little car dealership. But like we talk about, profitability and profitability is the oxygen. You got to have it. We got to have it to operate. But it's certainly not why we do it. Golly, man, there's a lot of opportunity in our walls that we've given to have the influence of affecting, and that's what's important.
Yeah. Vanessa, what and why? How do you find that?
That really is such a hard question.
I skipped that one.
I do. I personally think that Christianity is an education, and I mean, we'll just never stop learning. So I can say something that I really think right now, and then 5 years I'll be like, well, that wasn't really the why. I feel bad. But I think everything I've learned about the why is through trial and error. It's because I've just done everything else wrong that I've realized why you should be doing things. It's kind of like building your house on sand. If you build it on, profitability, or like you put everything on that's where your eyes are. If you put everything on your recognition for what you're doing, instead of glorifying God through what you're doing, that is all such fleeting stuff. I mean, it can be here today, gone tomorrow. I mean, we have no idea what is going to happen. And so I think through that process of just understanding, the wrong ways to do everything, I have since learned that if you are doing things to glorify God, and this is true. I really believe this, even though I know it can sound crazy. If you are doing things to glorify God, He will just take care of you. He really will. And it's that belief and that faith there. And until you walk that and see the faithfulness and see how true he is, it's really hard to get there and understand the why. But I think at the end of the day, if I can say, I'm just doing this to love Jesus and to hopefully help people see how loving he is, then I think that's success, and that becomes your why. And the key to understanding all this day-to-day stuff that we're doing is to figure out how you can serve that way, because we're all different. Somebody's going to be a doctor, somebody's going to be a missionary, somebody is going to be answering the phones at a business. You're the first person they speak to. Smile, sound happy, give some love that way. So we're all different, and we're all part of this team, and everyone is important. You don't have to go save babies in Honduras. Like, we're all and I mean, that sometimes, and you'll read like Dr. Lightfoot's story, he's so funny, he's like, hey, it was easy for me to get on a plane and go help like some poor people and come back to my life. Yeah. Like, I was like living a comfortable life. That was easy. It is hard to serve every day, loving on your spouse or your friends or your family who drive you nuts. Like, that kind of stuff is where the hard work and walking with Christ is. And so I think figuring out how you can do it your way and do you is how we can all be successful in that.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I really learned a lot. I hope you have as well. We are excited to continue this series as we hear from more people in our community. If you don't know who these folks are, I mean, I gave a little bit of an intro, but Vanessa and Ty are amazing forces for change in our community in a very positive way. I encourage you to get to know them, to engage and see what they're doing, learn from them as they're going in the companies that they're leading. It's really important. And that's really what we're trying to do through the School of Business, is to get professionals in this community in front of you so you can see what it looks like as you build your pathway and your journey moving forward. With that in mind, let me give you one quick announcement. And I don't know how public it is yet. Mark your calendar, April 5th. It's going to be our next in our series of the Business Breakdown. We have an alum from the university that will be coming back. She happens to be Senior Vice President of People Development at a little company called Chanel.
Oh, so awesome.
Okay, tiny little company. Yeah. She's going to be coming, and she'll be giving us the Business Breakdown program that day. She'll also be engaging with the Torch Society's scholarship banquet that evening. It's going to be phenomenal. Make sure you have it on your calendar. Thank you guys so much for being here. Go and be blessed.
Yay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.